I can imagine a conductor getting Philip Harper in front of him playing the tenor horn. It could be a little bit daunting, but
yeah. Well, I mean, I've always asked permission because I can understand that would be the same. But actually, my son played with the Wootton Band in Gloucestershire. It's a first section band, and I think they just got used to me after a while. Realised that, just like them, I was just a human being that can easily get things wrong sitting on second horn. So not immune to criticism as well.
welkom bij de 6e aflevering van Achter de Muziek. Ik heb net hier in mijn huiskamer gepraat met Philip Harper. Online. Het was een superleuk interview. Hij is dirigent van de Cory Band en componist. Ik zou zeggen, we gaan kijken. Welcome, Philip, in my podcast. It's called Behind the Music in English. In Dutch, it's called Achter de Muziek. It means behind the music, obviously. We're very happy to have you. And let's just dive into the first question. Could you tell us very shortly how you started in music?
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for inviting me. It's my great pleasure to be here. How I started in music. Well, when I look at my musical life today, it's always a bit of a mystery as to kind of how I got here, because unlike lots and lots of musicians, I had no music in my family. No one preceding me in my family is a musician or musical at all. But I think the way I started in music was actually in the cinema. Back in the late 70s, I went to the cinema and watched a film you've probably heard of, which is called Star Wars. And I remember coming out of the cinema, or rather, I don't remember, I was too young, but my parents remember me coming out of the cinema and saying, I want to do that. I'm really interested in that. And they didn't really know what I was talking about. But
not being a Jedi Master, I assume.
They asked me some further questions, and it turned out I didn't want to be the next Yoda. But what I did want to do was be involved with music like I'd just heard in the cinema that really stirred me. And of course, anyone who's ever heard the music of Star Wars, which must be surely the whole planet, will know that it's really, really brass heavy. And so, in answer to your question, how did I get started? It was really kind of when I first really appreciated the sound of brass, and it just did something to me, and it kind of ignited something in me. So my mother sent me along to the local brass band, and I started learning the tenor horn. It was a nice little hobby of mine. And then, as you go through life, you kind of make choices about what you're really passionate about and which route you want to go down. So, music, and particularly brass music, was really doing it for me. So I went down that path. I studied music at university, et cetera, got pretty far with my tenor horn, and I was principal horn of the National Youth Brass Band of Great Britain, for example. Finally, in my mid-20s, I decided to hang up the tenor horn and do more conducting. And that's kind of where I've been developing for the last 20-odd years. So, that's it in a nutshell. That's how it got started.
And we all know where you ended up with conducting, so we don't need to talk about that very broadly now.
Where I am at the moment, not quite where I'm going to end up. Who knows?
Let's see where you end up. That would be interesting. Where would you like to end up?
Well, I mean, I'm very kind of motivated to conduct at the moment, and just find I have a lot of creative ideas. So, I mean, my short-term hope is that I just get the opportunity to continue working with musicians of the highest caliber, so that I can kind of, give form to these creative ideas in my head. I mean, I guess those ideas are going to slow down or stop one day, but they're still going for now. So, I'll just keep going for now.
Yeah, that's very good. Let me segue into a little thing you said. You said you were piqued by Star Wars, the brass in Star Wars. And then you say you were sent to a brass band, you got a tenor horn. Could you take us through the feeling of playing tenor horn for the first time and imagining it would be like Star Wars? Is it anything like that? Maybe sort of, maybe not what I expected.
can't quite remember, but I would imagine that the first time I blew a sound, I would have been quite disappointed that it wasn't quite as similar to Maurice Murphy playing a top C with a London Symphony Orchestra as I thought. But, I guess, I guess the realization that if I was going to become any good at being a brass player, then I'd need to practice and I'd need to be dedicated and all of that. I get, that's kind of, if not obvious, then at least taught to us from an early age, isn't it? And it's the same with any skill in life, unless you're really, really lucky. And I think actually, ironically, Maurice Murphy was very lucky, and he was a very, very natural brass player, and he just seemed to kind of pick it up and play. But anyway, I'm not in that category. So, I put in the hard yards.
Do you think that mindset of knowing, oh, this is not yet it, but I need to practice to get there has changed over the years? Because I talk with a lot of conductors and here in the Netherlands, and also teachers, and they say that this has changed, that people really don't like to practice anymore, and everybody's expecting things to come more naturally. Do you see the same in the UK?
I think there is that mindset, yeah, and I think TV talent shows kind of perpetuate this kind of wrongful message that you can just turn up, with a kind of a sad backstory, get yourself on stage, and then in 5 minutes you're a celebrity and you own the world type thing. But everyone who's in the music industry knows that's not how it works. So I do think that things like that have kind of perpetuated that mindset. But having said that, I think anyone who's serious about it will understand the need to really put in a lot of practice, a lot of dedication, a lot of sacrifice over the years. And certainly, some of the musicians I work with at the top level have done that and reaping the rewards.
Yeah, and ironically, maybe the people who get perpetuated to being famous are the ones who practiced the hardest before they stepped into the room there. So
quite possibly, yeah. Who knows? I'm sure there's no magic formula, but like I say, some people get propelled to greatness accidentally, but the vast majority, if they find a path along which they want to go, then they'll realize it's a long path and something they need to kind of stick at as well.
Yeah. Let's get to my next question. So you've practiced. You've gotten there, you are here, but now you're working live. What does it look like? How do you combine conducting, composing, and maybe I think you're editor and publisher, everything in one? How do you combine it? What does it look like?
Yes, well, I mean, I don't do any tenor horn practice anymore. that's not part of my daily routine. Although I have more and more in recent years played my horn again. That was basically because my children have now grown up and gone into brass bands, and so I'm the sort of parental taxi driver, and rather than sitting outside the rehearsal, I generally tend to kind of sit in. So I do a little bit of playing, but no, practicing is not part of the daily routine. I mean, I generally work from home here, which is where I am now in my office, and my day will consist of currently a lot of composing, and there's a lot of project work involved with Cory Band as well, which needs a fair few phone calls and emails and planning meetings, that sort of thing. My role with Writing Round is as music editor, so I get scores sent to me, and that means every once in a while I need to kind of look at the stack of scores that I've got and decide which ones are going to go through for publication. And then a couple of times a year we release 4 or 5 new titles, and I'm involved in the kind of typesetting and creation of those, and then the marketing of those, and putting those out to market. It doesn't take up a huge amount of my time, but like I say, a couple of periods a year, then I'll be focusing and prioritizing that. But yeah, generally my work here at home is sitting at the computer or the piano, being creative, or taking care of admin like everyone does. And then my main work is obviously in the evenings and at weekends. So I'll go out to rehearse in the evening and rehearse a band, generally Cory or maybe some other band. And then I'm kind of busy almost every Saturday and Sunday, I would say, every single weekend, either with Cory, or I've just come back from the Sidis competition in Norway this weekend, and I'll be going overseas again in a couple of weeks, and just getting around. So weekdays I'm at home with a cup of tea in my hand. Evenings I'm out. Weekends I'm away somewhere.
Well, it sounds like a busy life.
Yeah.
I want to segue to your conducting life, actually. And you just made a remark about that you sometimes sit in with a rehearsal with your kids. I can imagine that as a conductor, I don't know which band they play with. I imagine it being a lower section band. I can imagine a conductor getting Philip Harper in front of him playing the tenor horn. It could be a little bit daunting, but...
Yeah, well, I mean, I've always asked permission because I can understand that would be the same. But actually, my son played with the Wootton Band in Gloucestershire. It's a first section band, and I think they just got used to me after a while. Realised that just like them, I was just a human being that can easily get things wrong sitting on second horn. So not immune to criticism as well. But so yeah, I think I've actually enjoyed sitting because, as I said to you right at the beginning, I'm just passionate about brass bands and the sound of brass. But as a conductor and a leader, every rehearsal I'm involved with as a conductor, you have to be leading 100% of the time. There's not a single minute of a rehearsal that goes by where you're not setting the agenda to what's going to happen next. Both on a small scale, what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes, and on a larger scale as well, planning the rehearsal and what have you. So the one thing I really do enjoy about sitting in the band is just to sit there and be completely reactive to someone else's leadership while still enjoying, the sound around me. It's kind of much more relaxing in many ways.
Yeah. And as a parent, you're also there maybe being proud of what your son does, or maybe thinking about, maybe we should talk at home a little bit about how you do this or that. I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe we like to chat in the car on the way home. But my daughter and my wife are involved as well. They play. My daughter plays trombone with the Nailsworth Band in Gloucestershire. That's a third section band, and my wife is the conductor actually. So often, or they rehearse on the same night as Cory. So often I'm not available, but when I am available, I always go along and help when I can. So last week I was playing first trombone, but in previous weeks I've played baritone. Playing timps is a favourite of mine. Sometimes even tenor horn as well. But I'll just fill in, wherever required. Really, it's just good fun.
Oh, that sounds very, very familiar, actually. Well, let's get into your conducting life. As a conductor myself, I imagine coming into the room at Cory, they just started a new project, for instance, for the Europeans. Everybody's obviously very good, very well prepared. And you get into the room. But what do you do then? I can imagine that it would be hard to find stuff to really do, but maybe not. I'd like to know about that process, starting a new project where you have a well prepared, not the best anymore, but the best band in the world, let's say for now.
Yes, a lot of people ask me this, so they imagine that I walk into the room and bring the baton down and immediately everything sounds perfect. I'm very pleased to be here today to dispel that myth. That is not what happens. Yeah. I mean, conducting Cory is in many ways like conducting any other band, although I could probably caveat that and say it's unlike conducting any other band, really. The similarities are that you've basically got a room of 28 people who have all come from, the other part of their life, maybe their job or their family or what have you. And we've got as diverse a range of people as every other band, really. But they walk into the band room door and all of that other life is kind of left outside and everyone comes together with this shared objective of making this great music. And like I say, that's not unique to Cory Band. That I've just described every single band in the world, really. But yeah, so there are a few differences. I mean, I don't need to tell you, but my job as a conductor basically is as a listener in the room.
Please tell for the audience, obviously.
Yeah. So when you're conducting, most people think, you kind of stand at the front and wave your arms around, and that's your key job. I mean, that obviously is a part of the job, but I've been doing that. I've been conducting for so long now that part kind of happens without me even thinking about it, the physicality of it. By far, I think the most important job of a conductor is to actually just listen to the sounds which the band are making in the room. And this is where you add value, or this is where you do your main job, if you like, which is basically you listen to that sound, you suggest constructively ways in which that can improve or that can move along whichever road you want it to move along, and then you use your communication skills, which don't have to be speaking. I mean, a lot of stuff with good musicians you can correct as you go along, but I'll say that your communication skills you use to then get your message across, to get people to focus on the things that you think are important. And then obviously you repeat and you go back. And as you go back as the conductor again, you just listen again and you monitor whether the things which you're trying to improve are improving. If they are, great, then you're doing a good job. If they're not, then you have to go back and try another way of, getting things to improve. And again, I'm sure all conductors of bands will consider this, but when I talk about that process of continual improvement, I'm talking on various different levels. So you can hear a sound in front of you, for example, which is like, let's say, for example, not in tune. Then you might stop the band and say, okay, that's not in tune. We need to do something about that. Let's listen a bit more carefully on that chord. And we play the chord again, still not in tune. So you then, as a conductor, you kind of use your ears and you think, oh, well, there's something wrong in, let's say, for example, the horn section. I mean, there's hardly anything ever wrong in the horn section, but let's just say, for example, in which case you start to kind of narrow things down, and your job as the conductor is to get right to where the issue is and solve it. And so that's on the sort of lowest level. But then continually as a conductor, and I suppose this is where strategy comes more into it, and especially with Cory Band, because we have so many projects that we have to keep a lot of plates spinning all at the same time. But you start to think about how to get the band to the best quality on the longer term, and that's when you're kind of more looking at the diary and looking at how to manage pieces of music. And so the typical rehearsal with Cory will involve a lot of different pieces of music, typically, some of which might be in the first rehearsal of a test piece that you're doing in a month's time, in which case, the performance quality won't be anywhere near perfect yet. But other pieces might be some that you're doing on a CD recording like next week, in which case you need those to be kind of further advanced. So you've been practicing them for a while. Whereas other pieces might be stuff that you're doing on a concert literally the day after tomorrow. And those pieces you would expect, again, to be on a different level. So that's the other level of things with Cory Band. You're always kind of balancing different projects and trying to make sure that music kind of evolves and comes to its best quality at the right time. So I think that's probably a difference between Cory and some other bands which might not have such a packed diary. But we definitely pack in the engagements at Cory.
Yeah, if I can just touch upon this, because as a conductor in the Netherlands, we don't have that many concerts going along. So the music you're rehearsing is nearly always for the next event. But would you say that is a good thing, or do you say maybe you'll just have some music that's not for the next event, but which you do practice to get the band to a new level, or to practice on a different aspect of the band, like tuning or technique or whatever?
We don't have time to do that at Cory. I mean, we expect the standards to be really sky high anyway. And no, we don't. Every minute of every rehearsal is taken up with something which is, I mean, if I use the word functional, it sounds boring, but you know what I mean. We're rehearsing a piece of music that we're going to be playing in public at some point soon, and obviously I can use those pieces as my way of kind of developing the band, keeping the standard as high as possible. I mean, that would be my next point about the difference between Cory and other bands is that level of expectation. Obviously, at Cory, I can set, as I'm the musical director of the band, so I can set my own expectations. And again, I think any musical director of any band can set their own expectations, but we have all sorts of things like, we will never do a rehearsal where we don't have every member there. Even if a member can't be there because they're ill or whatever, I'll always get a deputy player in. Yeah. So we always have a full band. That's my expectation, and everyone else's expectation as well. And with that expectation, obviously, I find they really are committed to try and make sure that they're all there. We also always start on time. In fact, as long as I can remember, we've always started at least 5 minutes early. So the official start time is 7:30, but people often text me and say, I'm going to be there at 7:26, so sorry I'm late. It's like, well, you're not officially late, but you probably will miss the start of rehearsal. And those are just some kind of external expectations. But then, of course, as soon as the band starts playing and I go into this conducting activity of listening, anything that isn't 100% perfect, I can pull the band up on. And that's the expectation, is they expect me to do that. And therefore I expect them to get as close to that perfection as possible.
I can imagine, yeah. But let's continue this topic, because what would you say is then the different in approach when you're working with other bands you go to, or maybe even lower section bands, as to Cory? Because obviously you say you can't work on long-term things with Cory, because you always have the expectance that it's going to be very good, and it is very good. But what do you do when you go to for instance, a lower section band or a different band abroad, which is not at that level? What do you do then?
I mean, the main activity is the same. You wave your arms around, you listen, you comment. But I think what I find going to different bands is that you do have to slightly adjust your expectation level. Obviously, you need to make it you need to set an ambitious expectation for whichever band you're conducting. But sometimes you use your ears and you listen and you think, okay, there's multiple directions I could go here. For example, shall I comment on the fact that it's out of tune there? Shall I comment on the fact that that's not together? Shall I comment on the balance issues? Shall I comment on a particular player that I think isn't doing the right thing? I mean, there's a million ways you can go. And I guess that's where it gets difficult, really, is kind of making that prioritization in your mind. But I would also say there's a difference between if I go and just do a one-off rehearsal with another band, there would be a slight difference there than if I was doing a series of rehearsals over a longer period with a band. I mean, bands that I've worked with longer term, I have found, my own experience, it's taken approximately 6 months of me in every rehearsal saying the same thing to the band. It's taken about 6 months before I've noticed any real change. So it takes a long, long time. For example, a big one for me is we have lots of very enthusiastic brass bands here in the UK, and some of them I think play too loud. And I think, for example, if you're listening to a band and you can hear that it's out of tune and people are making mistakes and the sound isn't good, you could comment on any of those three things, or you could just say, can we not quite play so loud, not be quite as enthusiastic? And we find that will solve all of those problems. But people do love giving passion and enthusiasm and what have you. So that kind of message of, look, if you don't play quite as loud, then the quality is going to be much, much better. Like I say, that takes months and months and months of saying the same thing again and again and again. So that, that might give you an example of how I would work with lower section bands.
That's very interesting, because I think most conductors imagine it going faster than 6 months, but 6 months is quite a while to get something a little bit better. But
because you're talking about changing the culture, and the same thing. You could say the same thing about starting on time, because I've had various conversations with various conductors over the years, and I remember one came to me once and said, I just can't get people to turn up on time. We start at 7:30 and people kind of wander in at 7:45. And it's like, well, okay, well, all right, let's push the rehearsal back then. We'll start at 7:45, to help those people. And all of a sudden people are coming in at 8:00. What what can I do about that? The conductor felt powerless. And I just said, well, you've just got to stick to your guns. It takes a long time to change the culture of an organization. You can't just say, right, we're going to, you need to be here at 7:30 as of next rehearsal. It's not going to work. People need time to get used to these ideas. And if you as the conductor, you're going to start at 7:30 and you're going to make some policy like, if you're late, then you have to wait at the door until we've finished whatever piece or whatever, and then you have to come in, and then you're expected to apologize for being late and tell everyone why you're late. This maybe sounds a bit over the top. I don't know. I'm just talking off the top of my head, but it's a way which
it is a policy, and that's good.
It's a way that you could look to change the culture of the band. Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly, at Cory, and everyone knows if they're going to miss a rehearsal or they're going to be late, they have to tell me. They don't tell someone else, or they don't not tell anyone at all. They have to tell me. And that works. But if it ever didn't work and someone missed a rehearsal and hadn't told anyone or didn't know, no one knew where they were, then obviously I would need to follow that up, because that's the culture of the band that I want to make. So so you can change culture, but I would contend it takes months or years, not just overnight.
You said you're listening and you try to fix things. Would you say you have a fixed repertoire of how you approach different problems, or are you always looking for a new way to solve the same problem?
Generally, the approach I take to problem solving is to encourage the musicians sitting around me to listen better to each other. In other words, I try to encourage them to take as much responsibility for their own contribution as possible. I would say if you were to sum up my technique of working with any band, that's what I would do. So if we go back to, I keep going back to this example, if something's out of tune, maybe I can hear that it's sharp, so it's a bit above pitch, but rather than saying to the player, that's sharp, pull your slide out or whatever, or use a trigger, I would generally tend to say to the player, can you hear anything wrong with that note? And expect an answer. And they might say no, in which case I'll say, well, listen to it in comparison with this note, for example, and pick out another note in the chord that someone else is doing. And they might eventually say, oh yeah, there's something bit wrong with it. And kind of work with people in that way, really, to empower them to develop their own listening skills. And then I think, obviously everyone in Cory Band is really, really good at listening to each other, and it just makes rehearsals so much more efficient. So it's just a kind of encouraging people to take responsibility for their own playing, their own contributions, really. And
naturally, that's also the long game, because it's not going to change instantly. You also have to wait a long time for it to evolve.
Yeah, so in lower section bands, that the issue of tuning is just, it's like a swear word, really. Sometimes I feel going into a lower section band as something's out of tune, which it often is, I don't really want to say the T word, because it feels like a naughty word, because I always think it's much easier for a lower section band to listen and tell whether they're playing together or not, whether they're playing at the same moment in time as each other. Most people can hear that. But when you're talking about tuning, a lot of people can't hear that, and that's because they're not practiced in hearing that. So I do think it's something that needs to be addressed. And like you say, you can't say to someone, that's out of tune, can you fix it? And if they've no experience of doing that, you can't expect them to be able to do it. At Cory Band, I can do that. I can say to a player, that note's out of tune, can you please fix it for next time? And they'll know what to do.
Yeah, the difference between Cory and other bands are obvious, but it's good to hear that the approach is the same.
Yep. Yeah, it definitely is. But the approach is just basically bringing 28 people together in harmony. That's it.
I also wanted to talk to you about another topic, and that's your composing, because next to being a renowned conductor, you're also now a renowned composer. Wrote some great pieces for the Europeans, one of which you did under a pseudonym. I can remember. I remember asking you at the Europeans, I think it was in Oostende, where a Destination Moon was first premiered, and you said, "Yeah, Paul Raphael is very good." Well, but to get into your composing, how do you incorporate your composing into your working life? Is it periods that you have an idea and you're gonna write, or are you constantly writing? Is that also a skill you hone, or is it, I have a holiday, I'd like to write a piece, let's do it? How do you approach this?
I mean, I'm lucky that I'm commissioned quite a lot to compose, so it's not. I mean, it's something that I really enjoy doing. Like I've said, like I said earlier, I've got lots of creative ideas in my head, which I enjoy kind of articulating. But it's not something I need to reserve for the holidays because it's my work to do it. And in fact, I mean, I've always been interested in composition, and I've always done it since I was a teenager, really. And I majored on it in university as well, and did a postgraduate degree, 2 years composition degree. And when the pandemic came along in 2020, I mean, all of the conducting work for me stopped overnight. Well, not just for me, for everyone who does that work. So I was so thankful to have the skill as a composer at that time, because that kind of kept me going financially through the pandemic. And it was something that I could actually look to kind of grow. And I did manage to, grow that and get a number of really, really good commissions, which was great. But as a matter of fact, now the pandemic's over and I'm back to conducting again, the problem is that I'm just commissioned to write music all the time and don't have enough time to do it. So, which is, I guess that's a nice problem to have. But again, like I said earlier, when talking about strategy, I have to work to a really strict diary. So I take on commissions, and if someone says, "Can you write a piece for me by next Thursday?" then the answer will be no. But if someone says, "Look, I want you to write a piece for me in a year's time or 18 months' time," then that's fine. I can schedule that and put it into my diary. And then it's a matter of kind of blocking out the time that I need to kind of work on the things that need to be worked on at that time for delivery, so that the band or whoever I'm writing for can play it at the correct performance. So it's just a matter of balancing the diary with everything else, really. I mean, if we could work to a position where there were 25 hours in every day, that would be amazing.
Well, they would be full anyway.
That's true, yeah. like the bandsman that comes late, whether it's 7:30 or 7:45, we'd just fill it all up.
Exactly. And you said, so you're composing mainly as commissions. You're commissioned to compose. Do you write anything that you just like to write yourself? Do you still do that, or don't you have time for that?
Yeah, I do that, and I do that mainly for Cory Band. Those are my kind of those are the projects where, I mean, that I'm so lucky at Cory Band. They give me total free reign creatively to do whatever I want, really. And the players do tell me from time to time that one of the things they like about being in Cory Band is all of the updates to the program that we get kind of all the time. I always bringing in new pieces to the band. We're working on a brand new program set right at the moment. We're going to present the story of King Kong. And so currently, once I finish this recording with you, I'll go back to creating music for that particular project. And that's the stuff which I kind of have in my mind, which isn't, someone might come to me and say, "Can you compose a piece of music?" And it needs to be about the centenary of my city or something like that. Whereas the music that I do with Cory is just 100% my own creation with no restrictions. Like I say, I'm just so lucky to have that kind of relationship with the band.
I can imagine, yeah. A band that could play it at any level. So that's really cool. And the Destination Moon, is that a vanity project, or are you a fan of Tintin, or was it a commission by the band?
Oh, you mean Paul's piece? Yeah.
Yeah, well, Paul's piece. I mean, yeah.
You need to ask him, really.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. No, I mean, of course, there's Destination Moon, and then there was the follow-up Explorers on the Moon as well, which we did in Montreux at the European. That was just kind of born out of the fact that we were representing Wales at the European, and it's always a big kind of conundrum for me, anyway, what to choose as an own choice piece. And I often think, the choice of piece for the own choice section can kind of define whether you do well in the competition or not.
Yeah.
And so I've always spent a long, long time kind of assessing music that we might choose. And that particular year, I just thought there wasn't the perfect piece out there to demonstrate what we could do. So I decided to write something myself. I mean, as you said, the European was in Belgium. So I wanted something Belgian, and Tintin is Belgian, right? So
yeah,
that was where, I mean,
very sensible. Yeah,
I am a Tintin fan, and I've read loads of Tintin books when I was younger. But it was that Belgian connection really that I was looking to kind of exploit, because I knew the judges who were going to sit and listen to our performance and make the decision on the outcome of the contest would probably not be from Belgium. They'd be from other countries, but they would be receiving Belgian hospitality in their hotel, and they would have a particular Belgian flavour to everything that they were experiencing. And I just thought I'd like to kind of go along the crest of that wave and give them something Belgian to listen to in the contest as well, and hope that might kind of give us an advantage. But I didn't want to. I'd actually used a piece that I'd composed myself a few years earlier with Cory in the 2014 European in Scotland.
The Divine Right, I think.
The Divine Right. I'd put my own name to it, but I was surprised, probably a bit naive really to be surprised, but I was surprised to hear some chatter basically saying that was a negative thing because they thought, it was a sort of an ego trip for me to play my own music. And I didn't, like I said, I really at the European, I'm interested in just taking any positive advantage that we can. And I didn't want any negative disadvantage at all, which is why I decided on let's use a pseudonym so no one knows it's me. Yeah. And I mean, if you're interested in the story, I handed the music out to the band and I didn't tell them it was me either. But after a while I had to tell them. And so at the end of one rehearsal, I think it was sort of February time, I sent everyone who was a guest away from the band room. We closed the doors, we locked the doors, and I said to the band, this is it. This is a secret, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to play this piece. I've written it, but I've put a pseudonym out there so that it doesn't bring any negative attention on the band whatsoever. And I said, I'm going to need to trust you because I know that no one knows apart from me and you guys. So please, please don't leak this to anyone. Don't even tell your wives or husbands or, anyone else at all. Let's just keep it absolutely in the band. And I do believe they managed to do that. Although, like you said, when I saw you in Ostend and a number of other people as well, they were starting to guess what was actually happening.
But did anyone of the band suspect because of the idiom you write in? It wasn't totally different to your own, actually. So
no, I mean, they probably suspected. Yeah, they probably did.
Very interesting.
But like I said, I maybe that was I can't quite remember. Maybe that was the reason I decided to bring everyone on side, and basically it was important that the band knew what was going on. Yeah. Because obviously, as part of a team, you don't want to feel that someone's keeping a secret from all the other people in the team. So that was my decision to kind of bring everyone on board.
Yeah. But this is a thing, maybe. As a composer, you like to write music, and I know I bring music of my own to my band, and it's always a difficult thing because on one end they like it, but you can very quickly go too far with bringing your own music. You can, and maybe it's only in your own mind that maybe I bring too much of my own music, or is this an ego trip? That's a very difficult position to be in. How do you balance that?
I just am always aware of it, and I know I bring a lot of my music, but what I found with Cory Band is if there's something happening in the band that they don't like, then they're very quick to tell you. If there's something happening in the band that they do like and enjoy, then they'll keep completely silent about it and won't say anything. And so,
so no news is good news.
No news is good news. Yeah, kind of that. But I always assess all of the concert programs that we do, and I make sure that we're including a lot of pieces which are nothing to do with me, because I don't think it's healthy to have 100% Harper / Raphael diet. Although I am committed to, I think my music and Cory Band can achieve great things in terms of audience reaction. So yeah, it's just that I am aware of what you say. Yeah, for sure.
Could we to wrap this topic up? Please, could you give us a little view into your process? What does it look like? You have an initial idea or a commission, and you go to finished piece. Could you take us through that?
Yes, certainly. It's interesting talking to other composers that I know some other composers do not use the same process as me at all. They get to a finished piece but via a completely different route. But for me, the way my brain works is I'm a big picture thinker. So my brain works by visual stimulus. So I actually can't really start a project until I know roughly what the whole thing looks like. I can't start on the lowest level without knowing what the highest level is going to be. So for a bigger piece, I will generally, just on a sheet of paper, I will generally write out the structure that I want. And when I say the structure that I want, I basically write out the emotional journey that I want to take my listeners on.
This is very interesting because you sort of outlined the same process with your concert programs in the talk you did at Brass Band England. So very interesting.
Exactly, and that's because I've been an audience member in plenty of concerts, and I go to as many concerts as I can. And although it's kind of subjective, I will often sit in concerts and not just let the music wash over me, but actually analyze how it's making me feel at various points and how the group on stage are actually creating those feelings in me, because really that's how I'd like someone to leave a Cory Band concert, is feeling that they've had a real emotional journey from beginning to end with highs and lows and everything in between. And you're right. When I compose a piece of music, for me, the artistic process is kind of the same, really. I mean, for longer pieces, when you can address a variety of emotions, then making that initial plan is really important to me. For shorter pieces, obviously, you might just be concentrating on a single emotion all packed into a 3 or 4 minute piece. But for the longer pieces, I can't start until I've got the whole thing planned out. And once I've got that sheet of paper, which is, like I say, just got words on it, really, words of emotion, and maybe words like fast, slow, euphonium solo, or whatever, just think stuff like that, and some timings as well, so you know how long each section is going to take. The next step is I will get some manuscript paper and go and sit at the piano, and I'm an old school composer, because when I was coming through university, there was no Sibelius, there was no Finale, there was no, even I can remember writing my essays, handwriting my essays at university. I'm that old. So when I was learning to compose, it was always paper and pencil and piano, and I do that to this day. And so I sit at the piano and I'll write a piano score. So I'll just write chords basically, and a few words and arrows and stuff that basically only I can understand. And then the final part of it is, open up the brass band score or the score to whatever group I'm working on and start orchestrating what I've got. And of course, things can change as you go along in the orchestration, and you make tweaks here and there. And sometimes you might even change the structure because you don't think it's quite working out. But that's the process for me. That's it. I start big and get smaller and smaller, and then work outwards again.
That's very interesting. I know a lot of composers who do it totally different, as you say, who think starting in the beginning will and let the structure evolve. But It's interesting. I also start with making material and thinking about the big picture. So interesting to see to see you taking a similar route.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong. I mean, like I say, I know that my brain works in a certain way, so I have to do it that way. But not everyone's brain works in the same way. So there's definitely no right or wrong, and that's just how I do it.
Yeah, but that's the fun thing of the creative act, that everybody does it differently. Let's wrap it up here. Actually, we've talked about conducting, we've talked about composing. The final thing I want to ask you is, what do people need to know? What's happening in the future with Philip Harper? Any concerts, stuff to look out for?
Well, I mean, we're as busy as ever with Cory Band. As I hinted at, our next big concert is when we release our brand new program, which is basically going to be one half of a concert. So an hour's worth of brand new repertoire, all in the vein of entertainment, really, the sort of stuff that we would have done at the Brassing Concert Competition, which we're not going to this year. And that's happening in Birmingham on the 3rd of December. We're teaming up with a local band, actually, the Langley Band, which we picked randomly from bands that kind of applied to join us. And then moving into 2024, we will continue to do our new program, our King Kong program. But everywhere we go around the UK and around Europe and around the world, we'll be asking for local bands to join us on stage. So that's going to be really a really exciting thing for 2024 is working with loads and loads of different bands on our King Kong program. I'm looking forward to several overseas trips coming up, which is always one of the real fun parts of my job. So I'm off to Switzerland quite soon. Doing a lot more work in the USA these days, which is excellent. So I'm off to Chicago in the early part of next year. Back to Norway again. Like I said, I've just come back from judging the Sidis competition in Norway, which was a great pleasure. But I'm back to Norway in January to a place up near in the north of Norway, actually called Hell. Which
sounds good.
Yeah, I've been to Hell before, actually, and it's a brilliant we're doing a musical leaders conference for the weekend up near Trondheim, and working a bit with the Nidaros brass band as well, which I'm going to later in the year with Tom Hutchinson, who's principal cornet of Cory, to do a concert. So yeah, the diary is really, really packed. And
you said you will be asking other bands to join in your King Kong program. Any chance you're coming to the Netherlands, and do we have a sort of maybe a...
Yeah, do you know what? I mean, with Cory, we've been all over the world, and we went to South Korea last summer, and we've done USA, and we've done Australia, and we all often go into Europe, to Sweden, to France. We've been to Switzerland. One country that we hardly ever go to is the Netherlands. I think we've been a couple of times since I've led Cory. Yeah, but we need an invitation. That's the thing, you see. I mean, we're waiting for the invitation.
Well, here's an open call to an invitation to get the Cory Band to the Netherlands.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's make it happen.
Well, and in that sense, then maybe we could just ask you, where can we reach you? Where can people find you online if they want to know more about you?
Yeah, so there's the Cory Band website, which is coryband.com. I've got my own website at philipharper.co.uk. But most things seem to happen on social media these days, don't we? So we're proud at Cory to have by a long way, the most followed social media accounts. So check us out on Facebook, and you won't go too far wrong. You'll see all of our content uploaded on a regular basis on Facebook.
Thank you very much for this interview and your time this morning, Philip.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Maybe till the next time.
Till the next time. See you soon.
Dat was het interview met Philip Harper. Ik hoop dat je heel veel geleerd hebt. Wil je deze podcast volgen, dan kun je je abonneren op YouTube of hier in je favoriete podcast-app volgen. Ik heb ook een Facebookgroep gemaakt om na te kunnen praten over interviews, om met elkaar in discussie te gaan erover, of om vragen te verzinnen voor gasten. Ik zet er altijd in met wie het volgende interview is. Kun je eventueel wat aandragen wat je graag zou willen leren van die persoon. Dus misschien zie ik je daar.